Hey guys, what's up? This is my 81 Z28. I just did a 6.0 swap on it. LS, well, Vortec, whichever one you want to go with. I ended up using the truck intake only because it had happened to fit under my hood, because I have a cow hood. But pieced it together kind of as far as like the cooling system, and I can tell you guys what works, what doesn't work, where I got the wiring harness, how I hooked up my throttle body, how I mounted the ECM. So I'm just going to give you a little quick run through of it. I'm still kind of working on it, still trying to figure out the alternator issue. But for the most part, I'll go ahead and give you guys a little rundown of it. So the only thing that I've done with this thing so far is I put new coil plugs on it, or coils, new plug wires, new spark plugs. The engine has 100,000 miles on it. I went with pretty much stock everything, cam, bottom ends, just the stock 6.0 bottom end out of a truck. I was actually able to use a tube from a 99 to 2004 Silverado that comes with a 5.3 or 6.0, which is it's about a 4-inch tube, which is pretty much equivalent to a cold air intake. So that way I don't have to buy one. I just went to the junkyard and got one. The math I went with, I got out of a 2004 Cadillac. It's a little bit skinnier than the truck one. The same, well, it has a different part number, but it still works and functions the same. It's still a 5-pin connector for GM. So on the throttle body, the hardest thing was trying to figure out how I was going to run it, because I'm on a pretty tight budget. I didn't want to spend much on this project. So I actually had some hood pins lines hanging around, and they actually work pretty well, at least just for now, until I can get some braided lines or some universal throttle cable to hook it up. But I went ahead and put a spring on here, and then I wrapped it around, as you can kind of see there how I did that. I took the pin, bent it like it was like the little hammer that's on the end of these, usually from the factory. Here's the plate. I went ahead and ran them in the same hole, and then it comes out over here to a 10 millimeter with a J-clip. Screwed it down real tight, and then here is my stock linkage for the TH350 that's in here, or for the gas pedal, sorry. This is the TH350 downshift cable, and I just took a bolt and bolted it together where the holes for the hood pins would be at, and then ran it around like a loop to where your cruise control would have been at. And then from there the spring comes up and goes through the hole and hooks onto here, so that way it retracts down like it should. Okay, as far as the cooling system, I went to the junkyard and got a 2000 or 99 to 2004 Silverado 5.3 liter top radiator hose. That worked really well. I went to the auto parts store and got a flexible top radiator hose that kind of shimmed down a little bit, and it works okay to do the job. The other thing I got was the coolant reservoir from a 99 to 2005 Silverado. It fits pretty well where the battery would be in these things, but I went ahead and moved it to the opposite side because it fits down there, and all you have to do that is just take this fender to radiator support bar off, which is 2 bolts or 13 millimeters. I used the stock radiator that was in here because it works, but I will be going with an aluminum one. It's pretty much the same thing that comes out of a newer Camaro, like the 98 to 2002 LS Camaros, which is it's only like $60 to buy, which isn't a big deal. I'm trying to think of what else. The serpentine belt, in order to get that size, because I did the AC delete, is you just take a piece of wire and wrap it around the way you want it, and then you take it to auto parts store and fit that wire up to an actual belt, and the tensioner will give you the difference in slack that you need. For the fuel, I went ahead and used the stock connections. I wrapped it around to the other side all the way down over here, and this is out of a 2003 Tahoe, and I pretty much bent it myself, and then have a clamp, and it kind of has like a nipple on the end of this line that I was able to just have a good connection with instead of double clamping it like I did all the other connections. Back to the coolant. So this is the coolant reservoir. I actually got it out of Tahoe as well, and it has a Y junction there. I don't know if you can really see it, but this line comes to my heater core. This one goes back into the water pump, and then there's actually another line that comes straight out under the fender well and around to the bottom of the coolant reservoir. The way I mounted my ECM was I actually had the stock bracket from a Silverado, and I kind of hacked it up a little bit, but I just cut the triangle piece that's on the back that actually mounts to where it would mount on a truck. I cut it to where it's just the top piece, where it's just a top little triangle piece, and then screwed a bolt, tapped the bolt into the housing, and put some sealant on there, so that way that housing wouldn't leak when I use my heat. The wiring harness I had made myself from a website called lt1swap.com. They pretty much tell you everything you need to know about it, and I use mine as like an F-body Camaro. So only recommendation is, because I've made two, is the truck version keeps the transmission, which is the 4L60 or 4L80E plugins, and the F-body does not. And you want, if you're running an old style transmission that's off of like 60s, 70s, 80s style car, you'll want the wiring harness for the F-body, because the F-body is run off of a T56 tranny, so it gets rid of all the extra plugs and plug-ins and things that you don't need. So on the wiring harness, there's the relay, which is the main power relay, the 4 fuses that run like your injectors, your coils, your math, things of that nature. It pretty much controls everything that the computer needs to make this engine run. For the exhaust manifolds, I actually use a pair of 2010 SS 6.2 liter exhaust manifolds. They seem to fit pretty well. There's a small spot that you actually have to cut. I don't know if you can really see it down there because it's a little dark where I'm at. It's right. I don't know. You really can't see it, but I had to chop it off just a little bit to make it work, but it fits a lot better than the truck version, because the truck version you have to actually cut the entire thing, and then you have to weld a pipe on there. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to use brackets. The power steering actually fits perfectly fine in these cars. You do need to buy a little adapter piece right there. You can kind of see it where the circle is, and I just used a clamp to bring it back to the back side of it and mount it to the actual power steering. So it's pretty straightforward. And obviously the power box, I left this wire up just in case I wanted to run another line, if I wanted it to go to the back of the car for like a battery relocation or something like that. For the wiring, to hook up the wiring harness for the main power feed to the PCM, I use the coil wire, because the coil wire on these old cars from the bulkhead by the firewall actually goes straight to the distributor, which runs and fires your engine and blah blah blah. I'm sure you know about all that. It's a brown tan wire. You can kind of see it right here. It also runs, you can see the orange wire that goes to PCM and runs to the back. I also run my fans off that wire because that wire is like a really thick wire, like a 10 gauge, and it can control the entire engine and stuff because it's so thick. It's kind of my main power source for my key on, key off positions. My return, I actually got lucky with this car. This had a factory 6-cylinder in it, and it had a return line already installed. So I kind of just used the Tahoe line that comes off of the engine and ran around, and then I just used some more clamps and clamped it together. But for the most part, it's all pretty straightforward. The bumps I did run into was that on the 6.0s, they actually have a flat flex plate, which I'll get that here real quick. And if your engine has this, you'll notice that if you turn it on the side like this, it's flat. It doesn't have a ditch. It doesn't bow out or anything towards the middle. And they also, with the 6.0s, come with that adapter that you need to use the old style transmission, so you don't need to buy that if you have that adapter on the 6.0, nor the bolts. So that'll save you like $40-50 there. Now, if you do run a dish plate, like I ended up putting, because I wasted my money away, I didn't realize I needed to. But if you do run a dish plate, you do need that bracket on here. You can kind of see it. Yeah, right there. You do need that, but it'll save you some money. And regardless, you're going to have to run a dish plate. It's about $100. What else? For my fuel system, I used a stock line that was already there. I just double clamped everything and made sure that they were sealed properly. I used my impact with my 8mm instead of trying to do it with a flathead screwdriver to tighten the O clamps, only because I didn't want to bother trying to bust them or break them with too much torque, and that's why I double clamped. I didn't want to have fuel spearing everywhere. Yeah, if you guys have any questions, you're more than welcome to post on my feed. I know that I don't have a lot of followers. I don't really do many videos very much because I'm more of a DIYer, and kind of like to watch people. But I've noticed that these people who post these videos about these engines, they don't really go into detail about what they did for a specific location of the engine. So if there's something that you'd like to see, I'm more than happy to make a video of it. And this does run, but unfortunately the battery's dead, and I'm not taking the batteries out of my truck to start it. But I will eventually make a video of it running. But I'll go ahead and kind of walk around the car and show you what I've done so far. So it's too dark to even see, but the fuel system that I'm running on here is called a Bosch 44 pump. I actually went on eBay and was able to buy one that was new for about $100. Usually they range about 120 to 130. I usually based most of this off a Hot Rod Garage magazine when they did their swap, but they don't really go into much detail, and I figured out a lot of things that can be, as far as like cutting corners, and because they do the most. And they use the truck harness, but it was too much of a hassle to use the truck harness because I actually have it in the corner, and I actually scrapped the idea because it just wasn't feasible. It's literally on the ground in the corner. And I know that for me, it doesn't bother me as much, but I want the engine bay to be as clean as possible. Now, I did use the hooker motor mounts that they were talking about, but I would definitely buy the new motor mount bolts only because I lost mine, and the holes on them are actually a tad bigger than normal, which doesn't affect it any, but you want to make sure that you have the bolt matching the hole of the actual mount itself. And for the top, I noticed that if on these engines, if you have an induction, you actually have to cut the middle out. Not of the actual panel of the hood, but from the induction cowl part itself, because it doesn't sit right, and it touches the hood. It makes a loud, popping noise, and you don't want all that. So what I did for the hat was I went ahead and just cut the back off where that bolt would go. Drilled a couple holes on the side. I don't know if you can really see them. Yeah, there they are. Drill a couple holes on the side, put a couple zip ties there, and then it'll pretty much cover all this and sit a lot lower, and which makes it look a lot nicer. But yeah, other than that, if you have any questions, you guys can more than welcome to make a video or make a comment on there, and I'll try to make a video for you guys and kind of let you know my opinion on what's the best way to go about putting these engines in, parts together, things of that nature. So deuces.